Look at this shit. Listen, David Pakman is a mixed bag, okay? On one hand, he's cute. On the other hand, he's a fucking lib. David Pakman engaged in coup apologia. You know what? I'm not even going to preempt it. No, you know what? We're just going for it. We're just going for it. I don't need to preempt this shit. I don't need to preempt this. Let's just... David Pakman, hit me with your best arguments. Come on, let's see it.
There have been so many bad takes coming from, I guess, what we're calling the revolutionary left. That's the non-pejorative term that we've, I guess, agreed on.
Just to clarify, actually, it would be the entire left. Not just the far left, just literally anyone who isn't a capitalist is in support of Evo Morales in this regard. I don't know, like, it's not revolutionary left. There's no revolution here. It's preventing a coup. It's stopping a fascist revolution. In this instance, this would kind of sort of be the anti-revolutionary left because we're trying to prevent a little fascist takeover, aren't we? But that's okay. Semantics.
To describe them, about the resignation of Bolivian President Evo Morales.
That's a very neutral way of putting it. The resignation of the Bolivian president.
I feel compelled to discuss it because the right is just completely uninformed about Latin American politics. So I really don't have any message for them. But there are a lot of people on the left that are either misunderstanding or just wrong in their conclusions about what has taken place in Bolivia over the last close to 15 years, calling it in completely black and white terms a military coup. So,
okay, so what's that? Wait, I saw this meme from the Destiny subreddit. Hold on. Nah, shit. There we go. Perfect. Just, this is the army literally arrived at his doorstep and was engaging in systemic violence on the condition that he stepped down, they would stop the violence. This is like, I don't know. Like, okay, I'm sorry. All right, okay. Meme hunting isn't how we're doing this here. Just.
My goal here is to go through the whole story. Hopefully this will be enlightening. I know I'll be called a shill and all of this stuff, but who cares, right? I mean, we get one shot at doing things the way we actually see them. You only live once, and I'm going to do the stories with the nuance that I think they deserve.
I'll call you a shill.
Because that's really what's missing. The problem is there is too much black and white thinking in general in politics. People are either good or bad. The military is either good or bad. So
this is something liberals love to do, by the way, which is they will argue in the harshest terms against things for which it is convenient for them to argue against in that way. But anytime something kind of sort of slips by, anytime that they their logic would naturally arrive at a conclusion they're not comfortable with, they become obsessed with the concept of nuance rather than nuance itself. There is no nuanced take that leads to one calling this a military coup with finger quotations. But that's okay.
Socialism is either good or bad. A politician is either a savior or a villain. And I know lots of people who work in the field of mental health. And they tell me, you know, a lot of the people that come in that I see, they have in their lives all sorts of different things going on.
Make your point.
At the root are often caused by black and white thinking about gray areas in life, about jobs, about relationships, about their childhood, whatever.
What the fuck is he talking? Do you think this 8-minute video is just going to be like, actually, you know, some people say things are bad and some people say things are good. Most things are just like, they don't have to be bad. They can be good or bad. I mean, they can be mostly good or mostly bad. If they're all bad, all good, then they can't be. People with mental illness tend to think this way. What the fuck are you going on about?
And I believe that the same is happening in politics and specifically with the Bolivia situation. So let's try to put that aside. Let's just all talk like reasonable people. No one's shilling here. Some people may be missing some of the facts. Some people may be coming to conclusions that are tinged by ideology. Let's not make these umbrella black and white declarations.
Holy shit, we're a quarter of the way into the video and he hasn't said anything. By the way, I just want to point out, this is the definition of poisoning the well. So he has already implied that all of his detractors, his future detractors, and all of the people who believe that this is a military coup are having their position poisoned by ideology. They're not seeing nuance. They see everything black and white. And also that that type of thinking is associated with mental illness. This is like the definition of poisoning the well. And I wouldn't mind that much if David Pakman was just another like radical skeptic, like dipshit YouTube bloodsport shitter. But David Pakman specifically actually generally tries to trend towards calm, nuanced discussion of issues. And he's a lib, so I'm not saying he always gets it right. But man, oh man, this is like really bad.
And let's try to actually figure out what's going on.
Please.
So the Bolivian president, Evo Morales, was first in office in 2006. A few days ago, he resigned at the request or demand of the Bolivian military. And request or demand we can argue about, but it's not actually the most important thing. Why did this happen? A few days ago, there has been rampant speculation about the most recent election being a bogus election. The Organization of American States put out a report saying that the election results were manipulated, including alterations, forced signatures, and wide-scale data manipulation.
So here's where I get to step in, because I did an oh no, stinky, and I read the OAS report. So it's not too long. You can go through it yourself. The OAS, the Google OAS Wikipedia, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. The Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is a top secret international organization. No, wait, hold on. Let me get the actual wiki article. Fuck me. OAS Wikipedia. Thank you. Okay. The Organization of American States, which David Pakman just referred to, is, let's be honest, a literal propaganda organization that was developed during the Cold War to fight leftism in Latin America. That was literally what it was designed to do. This organization means about as much in terms of political impartiality as one founded by McCarthy to discover communists in Hollywood. This is literally a propaganda org. And since the Cold War has ended, the organization has focused on election monitoring. Now, why do I say election monitoring with the same hand quotes that I condemned Pakman for using earlier? Well, the problem is that David Pakman was using these hand quotes to describe a willing resignation at the request of the military, the coup, which is undeniably a coup, inarguably, it meets the definition of a coup in every way. Whereas the Organization of American States was literally founded, objectively, no one would deny this, as an anti-socialist propaganda organization designed to combat the spread of leftism in Latin America. And oh boy, look at what they're doing here. The OAS report that they filed on Evo Morales' fourth presidential election, the most recent one, the one where the OAS said that it was fraudulent, that there was issue, I read it. The conclusion that they arrive at the end of their report does not follow from the data they have provided from it. It is bunk, and since the release of that report, it has been challenged all over the place. There are other people. I'm not going to get into the details of the OAS report. It takes much longer to dissect propaganda than it does to actually write it, especially when you're a organization funded by the United States government to disseminate anti-leftist propaganda. You can read it if you want. It's open for all of us to read. Go for it. The conclusion does not naturally follow from the data provided. They have since been met with criticism from not only myself, famed YouTuber Vosh, hello, not only myself, but also from the, where is it? There we go. Center for Economic and Policy Research. That's what I'm talking about. There we go. There we go. Here we go. Now we're back into it. The CEPR criticized the OAS's audit of the 2019 Bolivian general election, concluding that the results of the election should be voided because they were drastic and hard to explain changes in the trend of the preliminary results after the closing of the polls. So let me explain to you super quick. Super quick, okay, what exactly took place, all right? I'm going to listen, okay? So a bunch of people are misrepresenting this situation, making it seem as though there's evidence of a coup. There is not. I'm going to illustrate it to you literally using Clip Studio Paint. Watch this, okay? So, in line with the expectations of the sort of voting framework that is recommended by the IMF and the World Bank, Bolivia has two types of polling systems. That's right, count them, two types of polling systems, all right? You have the quick count and you have the official count. Now, here's the way the Bolivian elections work. Pay attention now, this is going to be important, and I will be quizzing you on it later. So, elections are done in rounds in Bolivia. A round will either produce a presidential winner or it will go to the next round if the sufficient results are not found. So here's what you need to win the presidency in Bolivia. Watch this. You either need 50% of the total popular vote, or you need to have a greater than 10-point lead over the next candidate. So you either get 50% or higher, a majority of the votes, or you get more than 10 points above the opposition. Meaning that if you win the vote with 40%, if you get 40%, and the next highest person gets 28, even you haven't passed the 50% mark, you still become president. If neither of these conditions are met, you go to the next round of voting, where only a certain preset, some of the higher winners from the last round are brought over, getting rid of the smaller candidates and consolidating the votes even more tightly amongst the popular candidates. It is a fairly reasonable voting system, for the most part. Like, it seems fine to me, okay? So basically what happened in Bolivia is that the quick count is a brief polling measure that is done very quickly to try and give the media something to pay attention to. You really quickly, you make assessments from the votes that are coming in, you extrapolate, you try and get like a narrative, a story. It's all about crafting a compelling narrative. Whereas the official count lags behind and is slower, but that's the actual official count. So here's what happened during the Bolivian election of Evo Morales, okay? I'll stop doing that. I apologize. That's very insensitive of me. Here's essentially what happened. First, we have the quick count over here. The quick count. Wow, what an exciting race, guys. So essentially what took place in the quick count was that for a time, it seemed as though the prerequisites for a presidential election had not been met. It would move to the next round because Evo Morales was less than 10 points ahead of the follow-up of the next person who was to come up. So he was ahead. Evo Morales was in the lead. However, the person who was next was within 10 points. And then there was a little bit of confusion over the presentation of the quick count versus the official count, like a common media slip-up. No information was lost or gained, no information changed, just the news media started reporting from the quick count to the official count. And what happened there was, because Evo Morales has a lot of support from the rural areas of the country, where the official count takes longer to tally up, what seemed to be, in the quick count, a margin of less than 10%, ended up in the official count being a margin of greater than 10%. So for a lot of people who were only following the quick count, it seemed as though a second round would trigger between Evo Morales and the runner-up. But the official count revealed that not to be the case. If I recall correctly, Evo Morales came out with 12 points higher than the next person over. That's it. There is no evidence of ballot tampering. There is no evidence of lie or deceit or vote manipulation. This is a clear-cut win for Evo Morales. Simple as that. However, some people wanted to run with the narrative that Evo Morales cheated on this election, even though there is literally no evidence to that case, and they have run with that, even though the facts clearly and evidently provided show that Evo Morales easily fit within the legal Bolivian qualifications for winning the presidency. That's it. Does that make sense? There was no election fraud. I want all of you to understand this perfectly well. Because there are a lot of people out there, like this guy, who are counting on your misinformation. And remember, the OAS deliberately presented this misinformation because the OAS's job is to delegitimize the governance and electoral process of socialists in Latin America. It was before, and it still is, and Pakman has fallen for it.
Now, there is already a debate about this. Well, does that mean the election was bogus, or are these just reports of irregularities like you have in many elections, including here in the United States? But for me, the real story is actually
there was no irregularity.
And I want to ask you this hypothetical. If Donald Trump, during his second term, imagine he gets reelected in November and he gets a second term. Imagine that during that second term, Donald Trump changed the Constitution to allow a third term effective immediately, but then also claimed that since the Constitution was changed, his second term is sort of really his first term under the new Constitution, so he should actually get 2 more. And then during the third term, which is really his fourth, he loses a referendum to allow unlimited terms, and then his Supreme Court justices that he has selected say, forget about the term limits, you can stay as long as you want.
This is an overwhelming presentation of misinformation. It is actually fucking disgusting to me. So let's go over this. I don't know what he's talking about trying to pretend that he should get 2 consecutive terms because under the new rules he would get like that. I actually don't know what he's referring to there. That's actually astonishing to me. I don't have a counter argument because I don't even know what the parallel is. But in Bolivia, you see, here is what took place. A lot of people like to rant on about how this removal of term limits means that Evo Morales is some kind of dictator. Here is what happened. So Evo Morales issued a referendum which asked the people of Bolivia whether or not they would be interested in the removal of term limits. It was an incredibly close referendum, but with a 51.2, I think, majority, the referendum did not pass. No reduction, no destruction of term limits. However, afterwards, the case that referendum was addressing was brought to the Supreme Tribunal of Bolivia. The Supreme Tribunal of Bolivia is democratically elected by the people. They are not hand-picked judges by Evo Morales. They are voted in by the population. So this narrative that he just threw it to his cronies is completely disingenuous. Their system is more democratic than ours. Our system has Supreme Court judges that are appointed for life by the president. Their system allows democratic voting of those judges. Just pointing that out. Anyway, the Supreme Tribunal of Bolivia decreed that term limits are unconstitutional and a violation of human rights, and removed them. Now, whether or not you agree or disagree with that decision on their part, I present to you 2 pieces of information. For one, if you believe in democracy as a concept, you should agree with Bolivia's right to self-determination and the right of their democratically elected court to legally make decisions that is within their legal purview. That is their right. And secondly, isn't going to the court about it after the referendum said no against the will of the people. Evo Morales didn't bring it to the Supreme Tribunal. The Supreme Tribunal picked it up themselves. The president can't like bring court cases to the attention of the Supreme Tribunal. And secondly, there are plenty of developed countries across the world that do not have presidential term limits. Canada, Germany. It's not like this isn't like a universal thing. Just because you remove term limits doesn't mean you're instituting yourself as a dictator for life. Evo Morales was still presenting himself democratically. He was still France too. He was still being voted in democratically by the people. Usually when we think of removed term limits, we think of that kind of like associated with also no more elections or phony elections or fraud elections. But here's the funny thing. After that little kerfluffle with the quick count versus the official count causing some people to believe that Evo had stolen the election, even though he objectively did not, Evo, get this, asked the opposition if they would be interested in a re-election. And the opposition said no. Oh, France does have term limits? Okay, chat's brain dead then. That's a classic dictator move. You win the presidential election, factually, and then people challenge you on it, and you offer to hold another election, and the opposition who claims you stole the election says no. That's a big brain dictator move. Strange thing for an authoritarian to do, but let's go, Pakman.
Wouldn't we in that situation, as progressives who are for the rule of law, wouldn't we be begging someone to force Donald Trump out? Okay.
No. Hey, I want to point out, by the way, because I'm consistent in this respect, if the Supreme Court of the United States of America decreed that there should be no presidential term limits, and then if the people of the United States of America democratically elected Donald Trump for a second or third term, I would not then want the military of the United States of America to impose a coup on our country and replace Donald Trump with a figurehead put in position of power by the business interests and by the opposition party that facilitated the coup. I want that being very fucking clear. I want that extremely clear. Because I do respect the rule of law, Pakman, and you just, under the guise of respecting rule of law, advocated for breaking the law and enacting a military coup because you don't like how the people democratically voted. This is disgusting to me. How can you in the same breath say, as progressives who respect the rule of law, and wouldn't you want someone else to take power? That's a very that's a very strange juxtaposition to me.
Okay, now let's talk about what happened in Bolivia. Evo Morales was elected in 2006, and people were excited because there were good things about his election. It's not black and white. He was the first ethnically indigenous president of Bolivia. That's great in a country that has such a large indigenous population. Why did it take so long to have an indigenous president? Fantastic, lovely. He reduced poverty during his first term. He offered a much more sensible and pragmatic version of the socialism that has been espoused by Hugo Chavez and Nicolas Maduro.
I love the way this gets phrased. Even with the uncritical successes of Morales' reign and regime, David Pakman still has to frame this as he reeled in the socialism a little bit. I mean, sure, he did some good things. His greatest success, he toned down the socialism. That's some really good framing, really dishonest, considering that Evo Morales is a socialist and everything that he did was in opposition to the neoliberalism that had been destroying his country prior to that point. The reason Bolivia was so fucked up was because it was completely beholden to the fascist aligned business interests that had been reaping the profits of Bolivia's labor and natural resources. And it was cutting ties with them and with the organizations that allowed them to come to power, the World Bank and the IMF, that Evo Morales was able to eliminate illiteracy, drastically reduce poverty, advocate for indigenous people's rights, advocate for women's rights, advocate for the re-emphasization of education as an important national goal, and more. We could go over the wiki page. He was a very productive, very, very honorable man. And I don't say that about a lot of leaders, by the way. I mean, you've seen my channel, right? Like, I criticize everyone. I've criticized Castro. I've criticized Sankara. I've criticized fucking Chavez. I've criticized why do I always forget his name? He's like the most well-known fucking socialist revolutionary, or at least one of them. Che Guevara. I've criticized Lenin. I've criticized Stalin. I've criticized Mao. I've criticized Ho Chi Minh. I've criticized literally like everyone. I've criticized Trotsky. So, you know, for me to say Evo Morales, a president, a leader of a state who ruled for as long as he did, is an honorable man, this is as good an endorsement as I am capable of giving to a leader of a state. Like, that means a lot to me. I am incredibly critical of the state apparatus, even when good people are using it. If Bernie Sanders was the president, I would probably be shit-talking him every week, much as I love the guy. But Evo Morales is a damn good man.
Invested in infrastructure and development and grew the middle class. Great.
Yeah, give me more.
But like with many of these Latin American socialists of the last many decades, he's increasingly authoritarian.
In what respect? I keep seeing people say this. He's authoritarian. In what respect? Like, literally in what? Like, what has he done? Everything that he has done has been through the legal channels of his country. It's all been done legally. It's all been done above board. And everything that he has done has been explicitly anti-authoritarian, bolstering the power of the people, offering free and open elections when contested. Yeah, it's just authoritarianism is when the tribunal independently determines that you're legally allowed to run for additional terms.
There's corruption. He was elected to a 5-year term in
what corruption?
2006. He got a new constitution adopted while he was president, which allowed 2 terms. Then in 2009, he called for early elections, won, and said, hey, this is sort of really like my first term because I didn't complete the first term under the old constitution. We have a new constitution. So I should really...
This is such a disingenuous framing of the way in which these elections took place. Holy shit. If you applied this level of scrutiny to American elections, you would be calling for a coup as well. Like, what's that tweet from fucking Twitter Squirrel? Oh, hey, did you know that in Bolivia in 2000, the Evo Morales, after losing the popular vote, was actually nominated to the presidency by the Supreme Court after his brother helped him win key support within one of the contested states? Wait, that was George W. Bush back in 2000. Not elected by popular vote, appointed by Supreme Court after evident and obvious corruption on the part of his brother, who was governor of Florida. Like, if you want to apply this standard to other fucking instances of presidential election fraud, then you would be asking for a coup in here in America as well. But for some reason, the only time that sort of like shaky, kind of confusing, muddled, nuanced business requires like a coup as a valid response is in Latin America. And when we do it here in America, oh, that's just politics. I love that David Pakman over here is talking about how we need to introduce more nuance, and then he's painting the most fucking black and white, stupid, unnuanced, unfucking charitable perspective on how anyone could interpret the elections of Evo Morales. Let's go over it, okay? Let's go over it really quickly. Let's go over the elections of Evo Morales, okay? The presidency of Evo Morales. In the 2005 general election, he won 53.7% of the vote, coming in 25 points ahead of Jorge Quiroga, okay? So the first election, this is an overwhelming victory. So there's no questioning that. increased taxation on industry, bolstered social spending, combating illiteracy, poverty, racism, and sexism, criticized neoliberalism, reduced Bolivia's dependence on the World Bank and IMF. His administration saw incredibly strong economic growth, Evonomics apparently, which sought to move from a liberal economic approach to a mixed economy. He scaled back in U.S. influence, built relationships with leftist governments. What a based fucking god. Latin American pink tide signed Bolivia into the Bolivian Alliance for the Americas. Attempting to moderate the left indigenous activist community, his administration also opposed the right-wing autonomous demands of Bolivia's eastern provinces. Winning a recall referendum in 2008, we can take a look at that if we want to. A vote of confidence in the form of a referendum, you guys know about votes of confidence, right? Was held in 2008. The vote was held to determine whether the President Morales and the Vice President and 8 out of the 9 departmental prefects should stay in office. He received more than 2/3 support, and 6 of the 8 prefects were returned. Ooh! That's a pretty unsuccessful vote of no confidence there when he gets massively reelected with over 2/3 support, a supermajority of the population. We don't get any supermajorities here in America. He instituted a new constitution that established Bolivia as a plurinational state, coexistence of 2 or more sealed to preserve national groups within a polity, basically the recognition of the indigenous people, and was re-elected in 2009. Let's take a look at that re-election here. Let's see how democratic that was. This was following a constitutional referendum held in 2009. So let's see. Oh, Evo Morales won with 64% of the vote, coming ahead 38 points ahead of the next closest contender. Ooh, yeah. This is a highly authoritarian regime right here. These open and free elections winning him in with overwhelming supermajorities, landslides for the best president that Bolivia has ever seen in its history. His second term witnessed the continuation of leftist policies and Bolivia's joining of the Bank of the South and Community of Latin American and Caribbean states. He was again re-elected in the 2014 general election. Let's take a look at that one. Wow, 61% of the vote, coming in an entire 37%, 37 percentage points ahead of the next runner-up. Wow, so every single election was democratic. He won in an overwhelming landslide in every single one of them. They had high turnout for these elections, so it's not as though people were being bullied or suppressed out of attending these elections. And he even won with a supermajority over the referendum that was held. It's almost like David Pakman is lying about everything he's saying. Again, guys, I hate standing up for state leaders right here, but Evo Morales is unironically one of the best, most honorable, decent people to ever have the opportunity to rule a country, in my opinion. In my opinion, it's subjective. So everything that fucking David is saying over here about, oh, he undemocratically and authoritarianly just imposed a new constitution so he could get 2 term limits. Nah, fuck this stupid fucking cuck. Holy shit. Evo fucking steamrolled. Look at his smug face. Look at him. This is the face of a man who knows he's complicit in the military coup of a leftist hero. Why do you think Pakman is doing this? Because Pakman is a liberal. As progressive as Pakman is, as orange man bad as Pakman is a liberal. And as the prophecy foretells, liberals are destined to side with capital and fascism over leftism every day of the week. Because they are incapable of stepping outside the system to which they have become acquainted. Bad Empanada is in your YouTube chat. Hey, Bad Empanada, I still think you're like a huge cunt, especially to me, but your video on this subject was good. Fair's fair.
Really be able to run again in 2014. It's not objectively bad to change a constitution, but one should not be allowed to stay in office longer than they were originally supposed to because of changes made under their watch. That's what authoritarians do. So
no. Oh, sorry, my apologies, folks. Screen. Authoritarians do that while suspending rule of law. Authoritarians do that while suspending elections. What we are talking about right here is him following the laws of the Constitution that he helped ratify and that was extremely popular with its ratification. Like, How is that authoritarian? Like, are presidents not allowed to follow laws that they passed? What the fuck are you talking about? What? Like actually, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, that's what authoritarian, they pass laws and then follow them. Like, what, wait, what? Okay.
This is already bad. He wins that early 2009 election, calls it his first term, so now he's allowed to run again in 2014. And a court, increasingly under his control, says, yes, he is allowed to run again.
Well, it doesn't matter what the court says. The Constitution allows him to run again, and it's not a court under his control. It's a court that's democratically elected by the people of Bolivia, and the court does tend to agree with Evo Morales because the people of Bolivia tend to agree with Evo Morales because he is an overwhelmingly popular leader.
This will count as his second term, not as his third, or his first term, not as his second. He barely wins in 2014.
What? Wait, I'm sorry. Did I just... Excuse me. Am I being gaslit? He got nearly 3 times as many votes as the next runner-up. How could David Pakman think this is acceptable? Was he paid to do this? I'm actually wondering if he was paid for this. I actually don't understand. This is a level of dishonesty that goes beyond what I think can be charitably explained by one just being a clueless lib. Barely won? When was the last time an American election had a landslide of this extent? David Pakman is part of ThinkSpot, Jordan Peterson's conservative free speech safe space. Listen, I want to be part of ThinkSpot too, okay? Was there more than one election level? No, there doesn't need to be, because he would have won in the first round. Did it go to a second round? It couldn't have. Not with this level of overwhelming domination. Like, what else would... Election schedule, electoral system... This is the provinces. Eligible parties, energy policy, opinion polls. Yeah, even the polls beforehand projected Morales overwhelmingly outperforming the opposition. There is some evidence pointing towards David being paid by the Ayn Rand Foundation after he was given money to debate him. Oh man, this is just really fucking bad. Okay, well, let's pay attention. After he barely won, okay? After he barely won his third election.
And then says, well, let's do a referendum to abolish term limits altogether so that I can just continue being reelected and reelected indefinitely.
Yes, as with many other countries that do not have presidential term limits. And with the overwhelmingly popular Evo Morales continuing again and again to dominate the election results, I think that in this instance, having no term limits would be a pretty fair and democratic representation of the interests of the people.
Voters reject that referendum in Bolivia. So what does he do? He appeals once again to a constitutional court filled with people loyal to him who say, yep, you know what?
Excuse me?
Filled with people. He appeals once again to a constitutional court filled with people loyal to him.
Okay, I thought he said he elects people to the constitutional court, just making sure he didn't lie again. Again, the people in there are supportive of him because the people of Bolivia elected them, because the people of Bolivia love them and love Evo Morales. It's that simple. He keeps framing this like this is a bad thing. This isn't evidence of Evo being an authoritarian. This is evidence of Evo being a democratically elected leader.
Who say, yep, you know what? Running for office is a human right in Bolivia. Term limits violate the human rights of Evo Morales, so he can run again, which he does, and wins in an election determined to have significant irregularities, some characterizing it as completely bogus.
Which is, again, as we've covered earlier, a complete lie. The OAS report does not provide conclusions that are supported by the evidence, and their conclusion ultimately was something that could be easily explained by somebody not knowing the difference between the quick count and the official count. It's that simple. So yeah, that's all perfectly well and good. The democratically elected tribunal of Bolivia decided to remove term limits, which is fine. There are plenty of other countries that don't have term limits for their presidential elections. Then Evo ran, won, and now people are trying to delegitimize his victory. And there is evidence out there right now, if I am so told, and I've covered this in my previous video, that there were people saying that if Evo won this election, they would stir up sentiment for a coup one way or another, which has, by the way, happened. So yes, nothing that Evo did under any circumstances could be interpreted by a good faith actor as being an act of authoritarianism.
So listen, do I want the military to take control of the country now? Hell no. I'm from Argentina. I know what happens when the military takes control. It's bad.
Except you're implicitly supporting the coup. You called it a coup, and you also said that if the same thing happened in America, you would want someone to come and stop him. So you say you're not in favor of a coup, but then you essentially act as though you're in favor of a coup.
Is this a black-white military coup?
Yes.
No.
It objectively is. He won an election, the military didn't like it, and they came after him.
That's an extraordinarily myopic interpretation that completely ignores history in Bolivia for the last 13 years. If an American president did 25% of what Morales did in the election system in Bolivia, we'd all be demanding their removal.
So you are in favor of a coup. Wait, you can't say you're not in favor of a coup and then say, if someone did even 25% of this, then we would demand their removal. Also, Bush's election in 2000 was infinitely shadier than anything that has ever happened in Bolivia under Evo Morales' term. And nobody called for a fucking coup over that because we're Big Daddy fucking America. There are no other countries exploiting our resources, desperate to turn us into a factory for misery and money, the way that people have been using Bolivia in the past. So of course we get to skip out on that. 100%. What a disgustingly dishonest take on this.
You'll hear comments like, well, this all happened because American banking and finance has ruined these countries, including Bolivia. How does that force a president to change the Constitution to remain in power longer? And how does it excuse it? These things...
Wait, it's the new Constitution. He had a right to bring it in. That was his legal right. And he has a legal right to continue running. And as long as the people of Bolivia want him to continue being their leader, they have the legal right to continue voting him in. There are no term limits in other presidential elections in other developed countries that we do not call undemocratic. I have no idea what the fuck you're talking about. Also, I do not know why you are pretending right now that there is not a long-standing precedent of Americans using monetary interest to facilitate regime change in Latin America. Really fucking weird that you're doing that, my man. Aren't you from Argentina? Do we play like the little Benny Hill music while we roll? Like, the revolutionary left is saying that capital is responsible for the coup, but there was no coup. But also, I'm in favor of violently removing people from power if they do even 25% of what Evo Morales does. And actually, they're crazy for saying that money or capital interest has anything to do with this, even though the new people who have come in, who are not democratically elected, by the way, have ties to America and to neoliberal regimes and are more interested in cooperating with the business interests of America. It's all made up. You don't need to worry about it, folks.
Things are not as cut and dry as the revolutionary left is making them out to be. So my request to you is, don't fall for the black and white thinking. And of course, the revolutionary left will say anyone who is not loudly opposed to this is a pro-military coup, pro-American interventionist Yankee shill.
My dude, you contradicted yourself multiple times in this video. And yes, we are going to call you that because you're doing everything they want you to do. And this isn't an opinion piece. You're expressing outright factual information in this video, or factual misinformation, my apologies, in this video. Like, this isn't a matter of opinion. This isn't us having different interpretations of what took place. This is literally just you lying to an audience because you're paid off? I don't know what you mean, my dude, but you preempting what you are isn't going to stop people from calling you that.
Let's be adults, guys. Give me a break.
Oh my God.
The world is not black and white the way you make it out.
Choke on my dick, you stupid fucking poofy hair cunt.
He also is corrupt. We are also seeing a lot of the same things happen in Bolivia that we have seen happen in other places in Latin America, like Venezuela and others, when these authoritarian-leaning socialists remain in power for longer and longer periods of time. Now, interestingly, the left and right share the existence of these factions who suffer from black and white thinking. On the right, you have these
Jesus Christ, am I listening to Destiny right now? Is this the omni-liberal legend? No wonder Destiny likes Pakman so much. Oh, well, you see, after this video where I lie deliberately about the Bolivian election results for 9 minutes and misrepresent the legality of the things that Evo Morales did, I'm now going to talk for whine about how everyone but me lacks nuance. And actually, the principal nuanced position on this issue is to lie habitually about the nature of the coup, whether or not it was a coup, and whether or not I would support it even if it was a coup, which it wasn't, even though it objectively is by the dictionary definition of a coup. This is the true enlightened omni-liberal position. Absolutely revolting.
Libertarians and small government people who think their black and white principles tell them everything they need to know. On the left, you've got the revolutionary left.
All right, I'm bored of this cunt. Fuck this stupid ass cunty fucking bullshit. I would use his fucking poof hair as a brush to comb my pubes. Get this fucker out of my face. Get him out. I'm disgusted. I'm done with him. What a piece of shit. Again, this isn't an ideological difference. This is just factual misinformation. And some of the factual misinformation that he engaged in is so egregious that I can only believe he's being paid off to do it. Again, he is a lib. He's not on the left. He may be left of center, but he's not on the left. And it just goes to show how little you can trust the American liberal. They may go with you, ooh, Orange Man bad, ooh, AOC, we stand queen. But when it comes to standing up for real change, for real socialists who are making real differences to millions of people who have been historically marginalized, oops. Oh, uh-oh. Stinky. Oh, no, no. Fuck that.